You know, love doesn't always end with shouting matches or a dramatic breakup. Sometimes, it simply fades on a quiet morning when they no longer look at you the same, a message that never comes, a hug that feels hollow, a dinner shared in silence. For Aries, the one who dives into love like a wildfire, their withdrawal doesn't come with thunder. It comes softly, without warning, without noise. But once their heart has turned, you'll feel it. Not in what they say, but in every part of your being. And perhaps the scariest thing of all is realizing you're still in love while they've already begun living a life that no longer includes you. So what are the first signs, the subtle but unmistakable signals that Aries is no longer loving you the way they used to? In this first part, let's begin to notice the quiet shifts, the gentle fading of a connection that once burned bright, but now dims bit by bit. There's something strange about Aries, something you'd never quite understand if you only saw them from the outside. The boldness, the fire, the endless energy, because beneath that armor is a heart that loves like there's no tomorrow. When Aries steps into your life, they don't knock. They don't ask, "Are you free tonight?" They don't wait for the right moment. They rush in, like a warm gust of spring wind that startles you and somehow makes you feel alive again. And in that same passionate way, they love you, wholly, without hesitation, without calculation. Every glance, every word, every gesture burns like a quiet flame in their chest. To Aries, love is a battlefield, not to conquer, but to protect the one they hold close, to the very end. But here's the hardest part about loving an Aries. The heartbreak doesn't come when they yell or when they walk away in tears. It comes when they go quiet. No more spontaneous messages at noon. No more bright eyes when you walk into the room. No more wild ideas like, "Let's sneak away to the ocean tonight." Aries doesn't say goodbye. They don't leave sticky notes that say, "I need space." When they begin to pull away, it's because something inside has burned out. The flame no longer has air to breathe, and the hardest thing, they still smile, still say good morning, but the warmth is gone. In that silence, they're cleaning out their heart, quietly, deliberately. A part of them hopes you'll understand, but the other part is already too tired to explain because they've already tried. They've already sent the signals, they already chose you, every day in every moment, but what they felt in return was something far lonelier, the feeling of not being seen anymore. I've told many people before, Aries doesn't leave because they stopped loving. They leave when love stops feeling like a safe place for their fire to burn, like a candle in a sealed room. When there's no more oxygen, the flame goes out, without a breeze. As someone who walks the path of healing, I won't tell you to hold on to someone who's already halfway out the door. I'll only ask you to listen more closely, to look deeper, because sometimes people don't need to be convinced to stay. They just need to feel seen, truly seen. Have you ever loved an Aries? Have you ever watched their eyes shift from glowing to hollow in just a matter of weeks? Have you ever laid beside them but felt miles away, like you were separated by an entire ocean of silence? If you've lived through that, I invite you to share your story, not to complain, but to let someone else, quietly walking through the same pain, know they're not alone, because whether you're the one who leaves or the one left behind, pain, when spoken aloud, suddenly becomes half as heavy. And then, in the stillness between two heartbeats, between two people who once meant everything to each other, you realize something deeper. Aries doesn't leave in the rain or in the cold of night. They leave in the brightest sunlight when they feel the loneliest. And when that flame goes out, what follows isn't a storm of tears. It's a quiet disappearance, like smoke, so soft you don't even realize what you've lost, until you're standing in the dark trying to light the room with a candle that's been burned out for a very long time. And yet, that silence isn't the end of it, because what comes next is not disappearance, but transformation. No drama, no declarations, but a shift clearer than any spoken word. It begins in their eyes, in their slower replies, in the way you suddenly find yourself, always being the one to start everything. And that is the turning point most people miss, until it's already far, far behind. Not everyone notices the exact moment when love begins to slow down, especially when the other person is still there, still smiling, still saying the same familiar things, but something feels off. A small space starts to open between the two of you. At first, it's just a crack, but over time, that crack grows into distance. And if you're in love with an Aries, you won't feel it through harsh words or complaints. You'll feel it through the absence of the little things that used to make you smile. Aries loves by instinct. They don't need a reason to show up. They'll send you a random picture at 3 a.m. just because they miss you. They'll show up at your door unannounced, dragging you out to try some weird new dish they saw on the internet. They don't make plans, they create moments. And then one day you wait and wait, but that morning text never comes. Another day, you're the one making plans, reserving tables, checking times. The only one who seems to care how the two of you meet. No more spontaneous phone calls, just to talk about nothing. No more spark in their eyes when you say something silly. Now everything is on time, on schedule, on rhythm, but missing the one thing that mattered most, feeling. Aries doesn't know how to love halfway. When they love, they give everything. And when they stop, you'll still see them, but you won't feel them anymore. And when you're the only one keeping the conversation alive, the only one sending good morning texts, it's not because they're busy or they've changed how they love. It's because whatever once drove them to reach out is gone. Spontaneity isn't thoughtlessness. For Aries, it's proof that they are truly present in your life. When that spark disappears, it means they no longer feel like they belong with you. I once heard a woman say, "I'm not afraid of silence. I'm afraid of being the one who always has to start the conversation every single day." And in that sentence was the loneliness so many of us have known, because love shouldn't feel like begging someone to take your hand. Love is when two people walk toward each other, no reminders needed, no calendar invite. If you're listening to this right now and you realize you've become the one always reaching out, I hope you pause, not to blame, not to accuse, but to truly listen to yourself. Are you still being loved, or are you just trying to make something look alive when it's already gone cold? It's never easy to admit that the person you love has stopped choosing you. But sometimes courage means sending nothing, saying nothing, and waiting to see if anyone notices you've gone quiet. The truth I want to share with you today, not just as an astrologer, but as someone who's also lost, the spark of spontaneity in love is this: pay attention to the small things, because those are the things that will tell you if the fire is still burning or if it quietly died a long time ago. And please remember, if you are the only one keeping the relationship alive, it might no longer be a relationship. It may have become just a habit. When spontaneity fades, love doesn't die in an instant. It wilts, slowly, quietly, hour by hour, in the silence of two people still speaking, but no longer understanding, still close, but emotionally worlds apart. So, if you're always the one initiating, ask yourself gently, am I holding on to love or just terrified of losing someone? And if you listen deeply enough, you'll realize what comes next isn't just coldness, it's a new kind of communication, a new kind of talking, where words don't bring people closer, they push them further apart, step by step, inch by inch, before anyone even notices how far they've drifted. Usually, when people still love each other, they argue to understand, to bridge the gap between two colliding worlds. Maybe it starts from a misunderstanding. Maybe it's just differences in how you see things, but deep down, the goal is still the same: to stay connected, to find each other again. Aries is no different. When they still love you, they won't avoid conflict. They'll talk, they'll argue, they'll slam the table if they have to, but after all of it, you'll still get a tight hug, a silent handhold, an apologetic look, followed by that soft, knowing smile that says, "We're still here for each other." But at some point, something changes. The arguments stop being about reconciliation. They become a way to push you away. Words don't try to untangle the mess anymore. They turn into sharp arrows, fired straight into the places that hurt most. Phrases like, "Do whatever you want, I'm tired, it's up to you," sound harmless, but in truth, they're quiet declarations. I don't want to fight for this anymore. When Aries shifts from fighting for love to fighting for distance, you'll feel it in every word, in the way they no longer soften when they see you cry, in the way they stand up and walk away instead of sitting down and asking, "What do you need from me? And what breaks your heart?" Isn't there shouting, it's the silence, because they don't even bother explaining anymore. Behind that anger is a deeper exhaustion, like a forest that's burned down to ash. There's no warmth left to give, just the leftover smoke that still chokes you when you breathe in. From someone who's witnessed many relationships right at the edge of breaking, I've learned not to judge anger too quickly, because sometimes anger doesn't mean hatred, it means helplessness. It means the heart has run out of peaceful ways to express its sorrow, so it explodes just to feel seen. I remember a man once said, "I don't have anything left to say to her, but I still argue with her because it's the only way. I get to look into her eyes again." It sounds contradictory, but often we hurt the ones we love simply because we don't know how else to end something we're too afraid to walk away from. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever found yourself in the middle of an argument without even knowing how it started? Have you seen the person you love go cold in the eyes, even as they say, "I'm trying for you"? If you have, you're not alone. And if you're in that space now, or feel yourself slipping into it, I invite you to pause, not to react, not to defend, but to listen. Not to the words, but to the energy beneath them. Listen to what they're hurting from and ask yourself, are you still the place they want to return to? I've always believed that arguments in love can be healthy if after the storm both people still choose to come home. But when the fights become a rehearsal for leaving, a practice round for life without each other, then love is no longer fighting to live, it's slowly beginning to self-destruct. Some battles don't have winners because both sides lose each other, and the most heartbreaking part, right after those arguments comes a new kind of change, a new kind of silence. Not peaceful silence, but distance, quietly building itself like a wall, brick by brick, story by story, secret by secret, no longer shared with you. There's no grand announcement, just a shift where they begin keeping the very things they once promised they'd always share with you. And just like that, a new world starts forming, a world where you're no longer the first to know, no longer the one they call, no longer the one they let in. A world you used to belong to that's now moving on without you, and you don't even remember when exactly you were quietly placed outside its borders. One of the saddest signs that love is fading isn't the silence after a fight or the missing good morning texts. It's this: when they succeed and you're the last one to know. You used to be the first person they'd run to with good news, the first stop after a big presentation, the first eyes they'd search for after stepping off stage or hearing they got the promotion. You were the one whose presence made a win feel complete. Every achievement, no matter how small, was something they wanted to share with you, not because you needed to know, but because they needed you to be part of it, to witness the moment, to feel proud of them together. But slowly, subtly, things begin to shift. One day, you find out about their new project from a social media post. Another day, a mutual friend casually tells you they just landed a huge deal. You smile, you nod, you say congratulations, but deep inside something stings. Not out of jealousy, but because you're no longer the first. I call that moment the quiet note in a relationship. It's not about fights or drama. It's about your role quietly changing from partner to outsider. It's like reading a novel you once starred in, only to realize you've become a footnote at the bottom of the page. Aries are emotional beings driven by action. When they love, they want you there, front row, witnessing every milestone. They want you to hear the good news from them, not from anyone else. Because love for Aries means co-writing a story, not in parallel, but together. But when the love fades, they begin to hold things back, not to hide them, but because sharing no longer feels necessary, because in their mind you've slowly moved out of the center of the world they're building. It's a loss that has no clear name, no big scene, but you'll feel it in their delayed replies, in their distracted eyes when you talk about your dreams, in the things they no longer show up for, not just yours, but even the things that once mattered deeply to them too. I once heard a middle-aged woman say through tears, "The day he signed his first big deal, I found out after the neighbors." That sentence didn't need any further explanation, because all of us, at some point, have felt what it's like to be left behind, even while standing right next to someone. And the real heartbreak, it isn't just not being told, it's realizing they no longer want to tell you. Everyone deserves to be the first person their partner shares success with. Everyone deserves to be the opening chapter, not the closing footnote. If you're in this phase right now, here's what I want to say to you. Don't sit there, waiting to be invited back into a story you were once part of. Ask yourself, is this still a story you even want to be in? Because love isn't just physical presence, it's emotional inclusion in the moments that matter. And then, once the sharing fades, you'll notice something else disappearing too. No more shared plans, no more spontaneous weekends together. It's not just that they stopped telling you things. They've stopped inviting you in. A new world is being built. A new life is being drawn, and your name is no longer written in the header. And this time, the silence isn't just a warning. It's an unspoken announcement. They've taken a different path. While you're still standing at the crossroads, waiting for a reason that may never come, there's a quiet kind of sadness. Not the kind that screams or shatters like betrayal. It's the ache you feel when someone who once saw you as the center of their world starts searching for light elsewhere. With Aries, love isn't a still, safe harbor. They love the way they live, with movement, passion, fire. They need a partner who climbs mountains with them, who turns every challenge into a shared adventure. Love to Aries isn't just a feeling, it's fuel. It's energy for the soul and the life they're trying to build. But when that love stops making them feel alive, they don't stay long, not because they're cold, but because deep down they fear becoming someone who's quietly burning out. And you'll notice it, not in grand gestures, but in the little things. They dive into new activities without inviting you. Last-minute weekend getaway, a night out they didn't mention, a new group of friends you don't recognize. They're not hiding it, they just stop offering it. One day, you'll catch them laughing harder with someone else, talking more to a world you're no longer part of. Their eyes, their smile, their whole energy starts reaching towards somewhere else, and you find yourself asking, what did I do wrong? What did I miss? How did I go from being everything to being something extra? Here's what I want you to hear, from a deeply honest place. Sometimes someone walks away, not because you weren't good enough, or loving enough, or worthy, but simply because you're no longer the map that guides them forward. We all change. Every day we rewrite a small piece of who we are. And when someone no longer sees their future in your eyes, they begin searching elsewhere, not out of hate, but because they too are lost in the story they're trying to finish. I once sat with a woman, tears in her eyes, as she told me, "He didn't leave me with words. He just started living all his best moments without me in them." That sentence hit me deep because so many of us have felt that, even if we couldn't name it at the time. Being replaced isn't always intentional. Sometimes it's just what happens when two people stop walking at the same rhythm. If that's where you are now, I hope you pause and check in with yourself. You may be hurting, but you're still here. You're still alive. You still deserve to be someone's first choice, not their afterthought. And if they've found joy elsewhere, let them go. Don't become someone's reluctant joy. Don't shrink yourself into the background just to stay close. You weren't born to be the dim lamp in the corner. You were meant to be the light. Ask yourself honestly, are you still their joy or just their habit? Have you ever felt replaced? Not with words, but with silence. Not with betrayal, but with absence. In the very moments they once needed you to be there. If yes, you're not alone, and I invite you to share, not just to release the weight, but to open space for those suffering in silence to know this pain is real, and it's survivable, because when someone steps out to rediscover who they are, what they leave behind isn't just an empty space, it's a stillness, a pause, a moment for you too to ask, am I still there in their heart? And when the answer finally comes, you'll notice what follows isn't anger anymore. It's a quiet letting go, a soft surrender, because they've stopped fighting, stopped fixing, stopped trying, and let everything slip away, as if it was never something worth holding onto. It's not the yelling, not the anger, not even the bitter words of a final goodbye. It's the silence. That's the loudest sign. When an Aries is about to walk away from love, You see Aries, the warrior of the Zodiac. They're not the type to give up when things get hard. They fight, they question, they react, they hold on even when it hurts. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes impulsive, but deep inside they're just trying to save something that still means the world to them. But then something shifts. They stop asking what you need. They no longer flinch when you say something that used to hurt them. They don't argue, don't explain, don't ask to fix it together anymore. Not because they've forgiven it, but because they no longer see a reason to keep trying. They grow quiet, and it's not a peaceful kind of quiet. It's a heavy silence filled with signals. They're still there, in the room, at the dinner table, sitting beside you in all the familiar moments. But they don't belong there anymore. You've heard the saying, when someone stops talking, it's not because they have nothing left to say. It's because they've said it too many times, for too long, and no one really listened. Aries knows that feeling. They don't quit at the first sign of trouble, but when they do choose to let go, it means they've been fighting in silence for far longer than you realized. I once sat across from a man in his 40s, a textbook Aries, strong, charismatic, funny, and he said something I'll never forget. I didn't leave because she did something wrong. I left because I no longer recognized myself when I was with her, and that wore me down more than any argument ever could. That's when I truly understood, even warriors have limits, and when an Aries grows distant, it's not because they don't care. It's their gentlest way of saying goodbye, without having to break what's already broken. You'll feel it, in the way they no longer hold your gaze, in hugs that feel empty, in how they pull away when you reach for connection, and perhaps most painful of all, when they no longer feel the need to explain themselves, because in their heart, the story has already ended. Aries loves with their whole heart, but when that heart has been starved for too long, when efforts go unnoticed, when conversations turn into empty loops, that fire doesn't go out with a bang. It dies quietly, from disappointment. Have you ever felt like you were talking alone? In a relationship that still seemed to be running? Ever caught that look in their eyes that stares right through you, as if you were no longer what they wanted to see? If you have, you're not alone. I invite you to pause, not to point fingers, but to ask honestly, are you two still building this relationship together, or are you the only one trying to hold the pieces in place? Sometimes rejection is kinder than indifference, because at least rejection is honest. But indifference, that's when someone leaves you standing there, without even telling you they're already gone. And it's inside that silence that Aries begins stepping away from the shared world. They stop talking about the future. They stop asking how your day went. They stop opening up about what's going on inside them, and instead, they build walls, not with clear shape, not with obvious boundaries, but you feel them. In the way they stay late at work, in the short replies, in the way they retreat behind a screen, instead of facing what you feel. And then one day, your hand reaches for them but finds nothing but a wall. And in that moment you understand, it's been there for a long time, you just couldn't see it, and on the other side of that wall is an Aries, quietly preparing to live their next chapter, without you in it. You don't need a breakup, no final words, no doors slammed shut. Because sometimes the end begins quietly, with the smallest things, like the morning they stop telling you how their night went, like a big decision made without asking what you think, like a weekend trip they forgot to mention. And then, even quieter still, they start coming home late without feeling the need to explain why. You're still there, sitting in the same familiar kitchen, sleeping in the same bed, sharing a life that looks like love, but deep down, you feel like a stranger in the story you used to belong to. Aries doesn't leave in dramatic ways. They don't scream, they don't complain, they don't cry, they simply retreat, bit by bit, from the world you thought was ours. At first it's silence when you ask, how was your day? Then it's the absence of future plans, and one day, you find out they signed a big contract, accepted a job far away, or started planning something important, and you were never part of it. Not because they hate you, not because they want to hurt you, but because you're no longer the center of their world. You're no longer the one they come home to after a long day. No longer the first name they think of when something good happens. And so, little by little, They begin learning how to live without you. I once heard a woman whisper, her voice trembling, "I don't know when it happened, but at some point, I stopped being part of his decisions, and I knew then I was no longer a priority." And she was right. When someone stops sharing, stops asking, stops turning to you, that's not just distance. That's disconnection. You used to stand beside them on the stage. Now you're behind the curtain, watching, wondering if they'll look your way. Most of the time, they don't. Because in their mind, a new version of the future is already being drawn, and you're not in the picture. And the painful part, they never asked, "Do you want to leave?" Because this retreat wasn't a choice you got to make. It just happened from the other side. Sometimes separation doesn't arrive with a night full of tears. It comes on an ordinary morning when you suddenly realize they've lived 3 whole days without needing you in any of them. If that's where you are right now, I want you to know what you're feeling is real. You're not exaggerating. You're not weak. You're simply touching the truth that someone who once chose you is now learning how to not need you anymore. And that truth, it says nothing about your worth. It only speaks to their path and how you may no longer fit the road they're walking. Have you ever felt like an uninvited guest in a home that used to be ours? Ever sat across from them listening to a conversation you weren't allowed to join, even though they were right there in front of you? If you have, say it out loud. Sometimes a stranger might understand you more than the one who once held your hand for years. And maybe, just maybe, the moment you dare to name your loneliness is the moment you start writing a new chapter where you are the center of your own story, not the side character in someone else's. So when someone starts living without you, what you need isn't to beg for a place back in their life. What you need is to ask yourself, when did I disappear from their world? And do I even want to keep existing in someone's life in such a faded, invisible way? The answer may not come right away, but when you're brave enough to look at the truth, you'll see what's waiting for you isn't the shadow of someone walking away. It's a door quietly opening, leading you to a place where you are heard, seen, and welcomed without needing to ask for permission. Not everyone realizes the moment they've been left, because sometimes someone leaves without slamming a door, without tears, without a proper goodbye. With Aries, when love ends, they don't create a storm. They become silence, an emptiness, the still air after a passionate wind. Someone who once charged in headfirst for love now retreats so gently, you wonder if they were ever really there. No anger, no outrage, no dramatic heartbreak, just the quiet truth. They're not there anymore. They stop touching you, stop looking into your eyes for answers. They no longer ask, "How was your day?" or "What do you need?" They stop asking because deep down, the question no longer feels necessary, and you feel it, clearer than any words could explain. One night you say something funny, they respond with just a nod. Another time you text them, "I miss you," and the next morning you get a dry, "Yeah, I've been busy," not cold, but no warmth either. It feels like you've become a polite acquaintance, nothing more. When Aries stops showing up with their eyes, their heart has already turned. They're not looking for reasons to stay. They're not replaying old memories to hold on. They're not looking for matches to relight the fire. Because to Aries, when the flame dies, only darkness remains, and they don't choose to live in the shadow of something that's already run dry. They go searching elsewhere for a spark, even the smallest one. As long as it's real, it's worth reigniting themselves. To outsiders, nothing seems unusual. Aries still smiles, still goes to work, still says hello with courtesy. But you, the one they once loved, you'll be the first to feel their absence. Even when they are sitting right in front of you, and your heart will ache, not from betrayal but from being forgotten. It's a sorrow with no clear shape, no explanation, and no one to blame, just you and the truth revealing itself. Little by little, in every silent pause, the hardest part isn't accepting that Aries left. It's accepting they left long before you even realized. They were packing up their heart. The final lesson I want to leave you with, and one I learned the hard way, is this. A relationship doesn't end with words. It ends with actions no longer born of love, with hugs that no longer hold feeling, conversations where no one truly listens, glances that wander, gestures that fade, presence without connection. And when the silence of an Aries enters the room, know this: it's not a pause, it's a goodbye. If that's the place you're in right now, I'm not here to tell you to hold on, and I'm not here to tell you to walk away. I'm simply inviting you to sit with yourself in stillness, to listen inward, to face what you're truly feeling, because sometimes what needs saving isn't the relationship, it's the part of you that you lost while trying to hold on to something already broken. And because true love should never be something that makes you feel small, invisible, or constantly proving your worth. If Aries has chosen to leave in silence, then choose to stay with yourself in kindness. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the whispers of your soul. Thank you for not turning away from the truths that may ache in your chest. I hope that, whether you're the one who left or the one left behind, you find light, not from someone else, but from deep within you. May you be strong enough to let go and gentle enough to love again from the quietest, truest part of your heart.